You know, so it's like it's already entirely public.
We've been pulling data related to DC schools to try and learn more about the process, linking different data sets together with the eventual goal of having a project to help parents negotiate the huge number of choices that they have around schools. And so Tom who works for the superintendent's office, has been really helpful in getting us to understand the data sets and figure out how to reconcile.
Show the visual.
This is just a really rough plot of the public and charter schools on a map. From one data set, we're actually going to replace this data with a different set of data that we just got, and hopefully merge that in with, if we're lucky by the end of the day, some sort of quantitative test data and a walkability score, and make a quick visualization.
And go down, you can see it, in 1967, is that the first year we captured? There was no public charter school, so zero enrollment. But as you go down in time,
they should be unique.
Closer, you start seeing when the first public charter school opened. And then you can kind of track enrollment in both systems, in the public, DC public school system and the charter system. And so we want to visualize these two numbers together and just see
when you're querying
kind of up
it
and
on
down
the fly,
enrollment in relation to each other.
About that a lot of social workers struggle with, and people who are searching for social services struggle with, is the lack of shared directory that can explain what organizations someone might qualify for and how to access those services. And so what we're trying to do is merge a number of those directories, including what the local government has in its outdated 2-on-1 system and what the federal government has according to its tax records, merge them all together, create a unique identifier for every single organization in the city, stand it up behind an API so that we and others can refer to it, and then prepare the process by which we'll then go to social workers in the community and have them categorize all of this data themselves. So it can essentially be a participatory community resource. And Leah here is helping me explain it. Which I need help with, clearly.
It's the current format. There's your zoning districts, and so it's all very, very straightforward, very simple, and we thought it might be a little easier to read on a map. Into a total.
The basic idea of this map, if you can see that's showing up. I mean, the basic idea is we just took the one variable that we cleaned out of that text and made it into FAR, which is the basic measure of density. So the higher the number, the more dense you can build.
Yeah, so the floor to area ratio.
So this map just shows by color ramping, from light yellow to dark red where the densest allowed densities are in DC. And we overlay that with the metro network. So the basic idea is, can you have any correlation between where you're allowed to build high buildings and where accessible public transport?
Different species, isolated from the Washington, D.C. street tree map or street tree database in the city. So that's red maple.
It is.
That is either Zelkova or elm. That I think is Quercus fellows. You have to see in my. Here we go. Zelkova serrata.
We got a new line.
So
here.
I was just basically looking at different kinds of tree species and how they show up within the city fabric.
Lines. I don't know why we have
certain things like oaks, which you might think of as the same kind of tree species. There's many different species of oaks, and they actually have very different kind of spatial patterns within the city. So Quercus
There's some buildings in Nepal. Okay. Kind of the idea is they want to do some disaster preparedness activities, and in this case, we want to make sure there's a lot of open data, a lot of available data, so they could actually use it. As well, or tell up in the air what this building is. I mean, it's definitely a building, but is it a restaurant? Is it a cafe? Is it someone's house? Is it a school? Like, I don't know. So it's sort of hard to tell. Yeah, I mean, this looks like some kind of field, for example, but kind of the idea is that you sort of trace the base data in the first place, and then if they need to do more analysis, somebody in the field can actually go out there with a GPS unit and say, okay, this is this kind of building, I'll tag it. And they can go back and add that information to the data itself.
And where does the data go?
It goes on to openstreetmap.org, which is a website that's basically open, free web map. It's kind of like Wikipedia version of Google Maps is the best way to think about it.
We're working on some performance data. They track performance of projects, and so what we're trying to do is take some CSVs and we pulled them into Socrata to create a couple APIs, and now we're building a little performance dashboard screen to try to show these data in a more intuitive, accessible way.
Place. I just wanted to get something done quickly, and that's one of the things Socrata helps you do. So we sucked in some data. These are CSV files, and then we used a tool called API Foundry that lets you create an API quickly. And so here's an example of the data set that we're looking at here. So these are country level projects with different baselines, targets, percentage. So the business objective of what we're doing is turn this into some more visual tool that people at MCC can use to monitor these projects. So anyway.
It's tracked annually, generally, and it's tracked with a good amount of time lag. And so the idea is if we can find some way to use more real-time data that is going to give us a bit of a insight into how those official statistics are going to turn out, that's the goal.
The tip we had is to use Twitter. People who live in these areas will tweet something, and they'll have some keywords that we might extract, and it might be good indicators of where poverty can be. And it'll be, like I said, more dynamic. It'll be real-time data, and we hope that will help the World Bank identify where these regions of poverty are.
Cool.
The House and Senate published bills in XML. We call it thin XML, right? It's basically just printing instructions. And so we are adding semantically rich XML that tells you what agencies are referred to, what existing laws are referred to, various budget authorities, so that we can automatically figure out what's in legislation, at least to some degree.
Adding, there's not really any data in the text of the legislation, especially as it refers to cross-references to other legislation and amendments, which are really the content of legislation, which doesn't actually provide any information of what's being amended or changed or stricken in the legislation.
We've gone through XML files that detail all the resolutions and bills that have been gone through by the 113th Congress so far, breaking it down paragraph by paragraph and breaking it down into bite-sized chunks so we can make comparisons against. So we can find out this paragraph here in a bill, has this been proposed before? Where has it been proposed before?
I think more, but if we can get to a point where this is actually working and we can go from zero to having it running and it has congratulations and it has our cool little logo on it, right? I think that we would have accomplished something pretty amazing today.